Hey everybody, it's Justin. When I was in undergrad, I studied information science as one of my majors. One of my assignments for one of my introductory classes was to make a PowerPoint that can present itself. This just means one where the slides auto-advance and it's voice recorded. My presentation was about Nintendo logos and branding. I recently rediscovered this presentation, and so I thought I would share it with y'all. It runs a little long and it's not in widescreen and the mic quality is pretty bad, but I think there's some interesting stuff to be found there. So without further ado, let's begin. If the sound from my title slide was familiar to you, you've probably touched a Nintendo at some point in your life, because it's the startup screen sound for the Game Boy Advance. Nintendo has some of the most recognizable intellectual property in the world, with recent surveys showing that Super Mario is more widely recognized than Mickey Mouse. In this presentation, I will explore Nintendo's branding through an examination of its logos throughout the years, and explain how these logos have contributed to Nintendo's image in its respective time period. Before I begin, I'd like to give a brief overview of what I'll be discussing in this presentation. This presentation is divided into 5 historical eras, which can be seen in the middle of this overview slide. Before I go into those, I'm going to be talking about the different aspects of Nintendo's logos that I'll be examining for each respective era. After I talk about each era, I'll give a final summary about everything I've discussed. For each time period, I will discuss 3 elements: console logos, box art for games and consoles, and advertising of the period, and if necessary there will be additional historical context on the bottom of the screen. These images are actually from Nintendo's first era, which took place from 1982 to 1989. In this period, the Nintendo Entertainment System debuted as Nintendo's first game system in 1985, following the video game market crash of 1983. In the early stages of Nintendo's foray into video games, brand recognition was very important. For this reason, the logo for the Nintendo Entertainment System, which can be seen on the packaging for the NES itself, was simply the Nintendo logo followed by plain text. Nintendo used a similar strategy in designing the box art for Nintendo Entertainment System games. As you can see in these images, each box followed the same basic format so that consumers could easily identify them as Nintendo games. Because the video game market was failing when the NES released, Nintendo advertised the system as a toy rather than as a video game system. This was accomplished by including a robotic toy called Rob with every console. In this advertisement, you can see that Rob is featured rather than the system itself. Overall, Nintendo formed its image through its logos from 1982 to 89 by creating unified branding that played off of its own company logo. It also tried to prove that it was different from video games of the past by distancing itself from the term video game. Hot on the heels of the success of the Nintendo Entertainment System, Nintendo released 2 new consoles, the Super Nintendo Entertainment System and the handheld Game Boy. From 1990 to 1998, Nintendo used its strong reputation to encourage players to play it loud. Nintendo's confidence in its established branding can be seen in the Super Nintendo Entertainment System's logo, which doesn't utilize the Nintendo logo at all. Instead, it makes use of a vibrant palette in a logo which highlights the Super Nintendo's 4 buttons, which was twice the amount that the original Nintendo had. The box art for Nintendo games got more creative in the 90s. The art for Super Mario Bros. 3, seen in the middle, dropped the format of previous Nintendo games even though it was released for the original Nintendo. Games on the Super Nintendo, on the left and right, still followed a consistent format, but they provided more space for each game's unique artwork. One of Nintendo's biggest ad campaigns in the 90s was called Play It Loud. In this campaign, Nintendo tried to market itself as hip and appealing by maintaining an image that was simultaneously grungy and colorful. The Play It Loud campaign encouraged players to make their game systems part of their aesthetic, which can be seen in this magazine advert here. Nintendo took a more daring approach to its logos in the Play It Loud era. Since Nintendo was already established as a brand, it instead focused its efforts towards making its logos stylish and eye-grabbing. With the release of the Nintendo 64, the graphics of Nintendo system shifted from 2D to 3D. From 1999 to 2006, Nintendo logos and advertising highlighted the new gameplay possibilities that the third dimension provided. The 3D element of the Nintendo 64 was highlighted in the 64's logo, which is comprised of the letter N in 3 dimensions. A similar approach was taken for the GameCube, which was the system released after the Nintendo 64. The box art for Nintendo 64 games also highlighted the 3D capabilities of the system. In the box for Super Mario 64, Mario is shown flying out of the box and into the face of the consumer. Additionally, the art is 3D rendered this time instead of hand-drawn like previous Nintendo box art. As I'm sure you could have guessed, advertisements in the 3D era also focused on the new technology of the Nintendo 64. Magazine adverts such as this one did so with phrases such as "change the system" and "experience true freedom," referencing the freedom afforded by the 3D capabilities. Overall, Nintendo logos in the 3D era showed that Nintendo didn't have to rely on what it had always done in the past, and that it was able to innovate with its video games. The next Nintendo era is often referred to by Nintendo fans as the Blue Ocean, for reasons which I'll go into shortly. This era, which took place from 2006 to 2016, was noticeable for the release of the Nintendo Wii and DS. The Wii attracted casual gamers with its appealing motion controls, and the DS provided unique experiences with its touchscreen, which was novel at the time since smartphones were not yet popular. As promised, I'll explain what Blue Ocean means. Blue Ocean is a business strategy used to reference the pursuit of new audiences through unique and low-cost business ventures. Nintendo did this with the Wii and DS by offering affordable price points and catering towards people who didn't typically play games. Before I talk about the logos of systems in this period, I would like to direct your attention to the upper right-hand corner. The Nintendo logo itself, which used to be red on a white background, changed to gray on a white background. This was done to maintain a more minimal and streamlined image, and a similar style was achieved with the Wii and DS logo. The Wii and DS monikers were reused for the following generation of consoles, the Wii U and 3DS. Game boxes also tended to use this minimal approach and focused on the hardware being used, such as the Wii Fit for the Mario Kart steering wheel or the Wii U stylus, which you can see in the games here. This approach reflects Nintendo's desire to streamline its image and appeal to broader audiences. Appealing to new audiences was the focus of many Wii advertisements, such as this one, in which a non-traditional gamer calls the Wii the first video game she's ever really enjoyed playing. Nintendo rode the waves of its Blue Ocean by drastically revising its appearance. By changing the color scheme of its logo and uniting its systems under a simple grayscale color scheme, Nintendo hoped to attract a new audience. This brings us to the current era, in which Nintendo decided to switch it up. If you look in the corner again, Nintendo's logo has changed to white on a red background, a callback to its original logo, which was also red and white. This switch is emblematic of Nintendo's desire to win back its older fans, since casual audiences now gravitated towards smartphone games. Nintendo released the Nintendo Switch this year. It's a hybrid system in the shape of a tablet. The Switch can be played on the television or as a handheld, with the assistance of detachable controllers which are illustrated in the Switch's logo. Game boxes are again flashy instead of minimalistic. The games featured here all have tons of stuff going on in their artwork. Additionally, the covers are almost entirely devoted to artwork for the games. The logo of the Switch barely takes up any space. This artwork suggests that the Switch is a system about games for gamers. This idea is illustrated in the following commercial for the Switch, which aired during the 2017 Super Bowl.
The Legend of Zelda, Breath of the Wild. Switch and play. Nintendo Switch. Rated everyone 10 and up.
The advertisement focused briefly on the hybrid nature of the system before shifting almost entirely to gameplay. The commercial supports Nintendo's current image as a company that wants to attract existing gamers with great games. The current era of Nintendo just began, but it seems clear that Nintendo's rebranding is part of an effort to capitalize on nostalgia for its old games and move away from casual audiences and towards its core demographic. We looked at a lot of logos today, but I hope you have an understanding of the purposes they served. At first, Nintendo tried to establish unified branding as an entertainment company. Then it developed an image as a stylish and technologically advanced company. It later changed its logo and rebranded to attract a blue ocean of new consumers, which brings us to the current day, where the logo is a powerful red, like it was back in the day. The most important thing to take away through this, however, is that over the course of 30 years and more, the Nintendo logo itself never changed, just the color. This shows that while Nintendo's image may have varied, it's always stood by its brand, and it retains the same values as when it first started making games.